A Trip into the Darkness. Chapter 22. When Troy arrived at the house in Miami, where he was certain he had felt Mallory's energy radiating from, he found it empty of her presence. However, the two hungover humans he did find still smelled strongly of her. In a fit of rage, he grabbed the male by his neck and slammed him into the closest wall. "Where is she, you worthless breath of air?" Troy growled in his face. I don't know. We were hanging out and drinking, then I must have passed out," he muttered in response. Troy quickly threw him across the room, and the human slid until he hit a couch with a hard thud. Walking out of the large open room, he searched the rest of the house and smelled her scent on the bed. Going back to the living room, he found the guy still on the floor, cowering down in the fear. The image brought Troy great disgust. The woman was sitting straight up on the couch with wide eyes, watching him. Walking over to her, he grabbed her arm and asked her the same question. She had replied with a similar answer when Troy continued to hold her arm firmly. The woman finally informed him that his Mallory had fed from both of them last night. How interesting. She was able to maintain her composure enough to leave two humans alive during her feeding, he thought. It had already been 2 days that she had been missing. She might be maintaining her composure for now, but Troy knew that it wouldn't last long. With a growl, he left the house. Now he was walking the downtown streets in the middle of New Orleans. He had tracked her all the way here and was certain he had almost found her when suddenly she seemed to disappear. He had been positive that she was so close to him when her pool just vanished. Troy felt fear that she might have died suddenly, but even if she had, he still should have been able to locate her body because of his blood would still have been running in her veins. That had been over 20 hours ago, and he was no closer to picking up her scent or pull now than he was when he first arrived. His men were also scanning the area, searching for her. The sun was just setting when Troy turned down an abandoned street. Looking around, he saw no cars on the road or people walking down the sidewalks. The architecture is what really gave it away that something was truly out of the ordinary. Looking at the classical buildings, they appeared to be out of the Victorian age. Of course, that would make no sense, considering New Orleans wasn't even a city during that time in history. Still, they screamed of an older, different era. The sky was a mixture of colors as the sun sank behind the horizon. Troy had never been someone to spend time admiring such things like sunsets, but it was enough to catch his eye as he made his way down the barren sidewalk and listened to the quiet sound of nothing. Pulling out his phone to find his location, he realized he had no service. Coming upon an alley, he heard the faint sounds of a saxophone and piano playing a harmonious tune. Turning down the alleyway, a cold breeze blew. It had been extremely hot all day, so he found it odd that the temperature had dropped so suddenly and dramatically. When he came up to a little shop with a streetlight beside the entrance, it all made sense. A very powerful witch resides on this street, and everything here is under their enchantment. Stopping in front of the door, Troy read the sign. Monique's Place of Magic. Typical, Troy thought as he opened the door and stepped inside. He had only met a few witches in his life, and every one of them had loved keeping an air of mystery about themselves. The door shut behind him, and he was blasted with the overwhelming smell of smoke. It swirled and danced around the room as he stood there. He was a patient man and would wait for his host to show herself. He could hear the woman's heartbeat coming from the back, somewhere behind the beaded curtains, yet he couldn't smell her scent because of the smoke. After a few minutes, Troy couldn't help the cough that tore through him. His eyes had also started to water, and he felt lightheaded. Whatever she was burning was already starting to affect him. It was then that he heard her approach. "Welcome to Monique's, strong one. How can I assist you today?" Troy looked at the woman and her odd choice of clothing. It looked like she had draped herself in numerous cloths and beads. He was surprised when she finally got close enough for him to smell her. She wasn't just a witch, but also a natural born. What a rare combination. He had seen witches turned into changelings, but had never met one that was born a witch and a vampire. "I am seeking my changeling. She escaped me, and the last time I felt her, she was somewhere in your city. Do you happen to know anything about her disappearance?" he asked. Smiling, the woman turned around, walked to a table, and sat down in a chair. Getting the hint, Troy followed her and sat down across from her. "I might know of your changeling, yes. Word on the street says she was not happy with your cruel treatment of her, the woman said, while staring deep into Troy's eyes. The emerald colored of her irises were unnatural and otherworldly. He coughed again before asking, "Well, where is she, witch? I do not have time for your games. She is in a fragile state, and I must find her before she perishes or draws unnecessary attention to herself." Clicking her tongue, the woman shook her head. "Such a demanding and arrogant creature you are. You might be wealthy with a strong bloodline, but need I to remind you that you aren't even 100 years old? Strength and true power comes with time, youngling." The woman snapped at him and showed her fangs. Licking his dry lips, he decided he might have to try a different tactic with her. It was never an smart idea to piss off a witch, especially one like her. Glancing around her shop, he noticed the numerous plants and herbs and bones, and guessed that her main practice had their origins in voodoo or hoodoo. "I am not trying to be disrespectful, powerful one. I am just in a hurry and worried that I can't feel her pull or my blood in her anymore." "Of course you can't, because she is wearing an ancient talisman. It has engulfed her energy with its own, making her harder to spot for all immortal creatures," the woman informed him with a smile. Clenching his fists, Troy asked her, "And where would she have gotten her hands on something like that?" "Simple. I gave it to her." With a hiss, he shot up from his seat and slammed his fists upon the table. "Why would you do that? Surely you know how dangerous she is to everyone around her. I must find her. She is my responsibility," Troy yelled at the woman. Her only response was a simple shrug of her shoulders. Pacing the shop, Troy tried to think of a way to bargain with this woman, but he felt high as a kite and was having a really hard time forming thoughts in his head. "I guess without a blood bond, you will have to track her the old-fashioned way. Of course, I'm not certain that someone with your status in life would have any skills in tracking immortal beings," she said. "She isn't hardly immortal, and that's the problem. I lost her, now she's going to die, and it will be my fault. I sent her to Brazil on an errand of mine. If I were you, I would find a way to cross the border and go to Mexico to find her. I'm sure she won't make it too far into Mexico until she realizes what a different world it is down there and runs into a few problems." Troy stopped his pacing to look at her. Currently, she was sitting in her chair with a small, smug smile pulling at her full lips. "Why would you interfere or tell me that when you're the one who started this?" he asked. "Let's just say I have evened out the playing field. Now, if I were you, I would get to Texas and cross the border as fast as possible. If you have any minions, you might want to take them with you so you have more coverage of the land," she said. Nodding, Troy knew she was right. Without another word or look at the witch vampire, he turned around and stormed out the door into the quiet and cold night.